All right, welcome back everyone to Jface Games. Today I'm going to talk about Draw Steel. I had the opportunity to do a little combat. I'm running the Delian Tomb for some friends, and I want to show you how it felt to be a GM running it for the first time. And spoiler, it felt really good. Now, Draw Steel is obviously, I'll show you the cover of the Delian Tomb. If you don't want to be spoiled to anything in this, then don't watch the rest of the video. Because I'm going to be showing the first map from it, right? Or the first major combat map. Also, if you don't like miniatures tactics with grids, then you probably won't like this game. If you didn't like 4th edition at all, maybe you won't like it. I don't know. I think it's a lot of fun. So let's talk about how it felt as a GM to run this. Now, in the second encounter of the Delian Tomb, you fight a lot of minions. And we'll talk about what minions are in just a second. But I remember I've got some players in my group that have been playing with me since we were 12, so over 30 years. And they are very experienced. They've played 4E, 5E, 30, PF1, PF2, I've Crown and Skull. We've done a bunch of games together. And I remember reading to him that you are about to face 24 goblins. And this is what the encounter looks like over here. I said 24 goblins, and he just said, excuse me, say that again? Because to him, the action economy in 24 goblins, the math doesn't even math. Because even if you're playing 4E and you have minions, 4E minions, there's still a lot of action economy there, right? They can do a lot. So this is what the setup looks like. I've got all these goblins here, and I've got here are the heroes up here. Now, here's the deal. Typically, if I were a GM and I was doing like 5e, I would look at this and it would be nightmare sauce because I would think about having to run all of these monsters and also use all of their stat blocks. That would be a nightmare. 2, the initiative would be a nightmare. Thinking about how do I roll up all these things, how do I do it, etc. Now, MCDM had minion rules for 5e. I never played with them, but I'm assuming they're very similar to this, but the minion rules are fabulous. So let's talk about why this was smooth, and then we'll go into some action, like tactical stuff that I think is just juicy about this game. So, first off, initiative. You can see this Congo line on the left here. This is how, if I were an owlbear, I'm using Foundry VTT, so I don't have to do this, because in there you use the Lancer initiative module. But in Foundry, or if I'm in owlbear, I would probably just make this Congo line, right? And the idea here being that if they're here, they haven't gone, and if they're over here, they've gone, right? Simple as that. And so now all I have to do is I put this out, and the players, either the players are going first or I'm going first, based on initiative, and I say, okay, who wants to go? One of them decides to go. This guy does something. He comes down, blah, blah, blah. He does some stuff. Now, as the GM, I just choose a color, right? Which color do I want to go next? I'm going to have red go, so I'm going to do red individual. This is the commander or the captain. So the red captain goes, and he does his thing. And then I'll have the red minions as a group go. Now, let's talk real quick about action economy, right? So if we're looking at the action economy, of this game, here we go. Pretty much, this is the typical action economy, right? If you're a normie, you've got 3 things you can do. You can either do your main action, a maneuver, or a move. Or you could do 2 maneuvers and a move, or you could do a maneuver, 2 moves, or you could do 3 moves. So it's very much like 4E, where you had standard, minor, major, standard, major, minor, something like that. Or, what is it, major, minor, move, right? Something along those lines. Where the big ones can become the lower ones. So this is what, as a GM, we're going from the GM's perspective, this is what this means my mobs can do. My minions, they can only do this. They can either do an action move, maneuver, move, right? So they're a little simpler. Then, what is an action, a maneuver, or a move? It gets a little laundry listy, right? And you see this and you think, oh God, so many things they can do. It actually becomes very intuitive, right? If you've played a lot of these games before, for someone who's new, maybe this is a lot. But for a player who's been playing, eventually you're going to say, I want to do this right now. And there is an action for that because you're like, I need to heal that buddy, right? Well, that's an action. That's a main action. Oh, can I help you? Yeah, that's an aid. You're going to use a maneuver to do that. Can I grab this dude? Yeah, it's a maneuver. So the GM probably has to have this reference list available, but you'll find that it's pretty intuitive. And the Delian Tube does a good job of titrating out the information as you're kind of starting, right? Which is nice. So that means that when these minions go, what's also really nice is, once again, we use this concept of a power roll, right? So the whole thing is based on these power rolls, which I'm doing a little flipping. I apologize for the flippy flips, but which one is this? Oh, I gotta do this. Boop. And now it's available. Oh, no, wrong one. Bump. Okay. So now you have these power rolls. So let's go to this snipers, right? And as long as I keep this open, where I can quickly flip between that one and these two, which is what I did, I can very easily roll this information. So what's nice with the minions is they do one roll for the whole group. So I roll 2d10, which is their power roll. I then check this chart, 2d10 plus 2. Oh, they got a 12? Okay, that means they're going to do 4 damage on an attack, right? So that doesn't mean that I would just say, okay, all 4 of these are all going to shoot this guy, and I'm going to do 16 damage. That's not how it works. The rules kind of tell you, hey, you should try and spread out the damage. So I could have all 4 of these guys attack. Each one of them hits one of these guys, and so everyone in the party takes 4 damage. But let's say I decide, oh no, 2 of these guys, these 2 are actually going to shoot him. What it is the first one does 4 damage. The second one does what's called the free strike. So that's 2 damage. So it adds another 2. So it's 6 damage to that character. And so it's as easy as that. I roll 2d10 plus 2. I just move these guys where I think it would be. And these guys aren't archers, so they charge up. This guy charges up. This guy charges up. You take 4, you take 4, you take 6, because these guys are going to come running around here. Whatever. Right? Boom. This thing's turn is over. Right? This guy, I might get a little more creative. So this is the warrior. And you can see over here, you could do a spear charge. If I've got some malice, which is a currency I can burn, I could do something a little cooler, right? But I'm just going to have him do a spear charge. So he gets to run in. I rolled 2d10 plus 2. I figure out what the result is. Another 3 damage, right? This is how I ran this. I wasn't going overly tactical, right? But you can see how this still causes a headache to these players. Now, the one that I was getting a little tactical with is that there's a really fun push mechanic in this game where you can push people into each other, and you're going to do damage. In essence, if this is how much you're pushing them, right? So you either push them 4 spaces, 3, or 1. If they can't move more spaces because either a buddy's behind them or a wall's behind them, they take the extra move they can't do as damage. So I would have like this guy, like so this mage over here is in a bit bad position. This guy would charge up. I'd roll the 2d10 plus 2. Let's say I got a 3. Not only is he doing 4 damage because his attack does 4, but he does an extra 3 because this guy couldn't move 3 spaces backwards. The wall's there. So he just takes 7, which 7 damage is a lot from a minion, right? So this was how I ran the game. Now the player goes. You move one of those players. If we go back to this, you move one of the players, and then I choose another group. Okay, I'm going to choose the yellow group, and now the yellow does this. And the minions fly. It's so easy to run those minions. And the main guys, at least in this encounter, very easy, very simple. All I have to do is roll 2d10 and then just check to see what that ability does. And I was just using the scroll wheel up and down. Super simple. Now, these are simple mobs. Later, mobs do get very challenging. If I were going to try and do my first encounter with a boss mob, or with a leader or an elite or those things, yeah, that can get complicated. In addition to that, the other thing that might be quote-unquote complicated is I had a meta currency that I could spin, this Malice. But to be honest, when the player's taking their turn, I'm letting them, they're talking and doing their tactics. I just read, I simply just came up here and scrolled, and I had 7 Malice, and I was like, what's this do? Oh, perfect, simple. And I just burn it, right? So I thought the minions played very smoothly, and I thought the fact that we were able to do this combat, and this combat only took about 3 rounds because you can run through minions. If you don't know about the minion mechanic, in essence, if this wizard hits this minion for X amount of damage, let's talk about minion damage first. Minion health is linked. So typically this minion right here, which is a goblin spine cleaver, he has 5 stamina. Right? Well, there are 4 of them in the red group. So that means the red group minion spine cleavers have 20 stamina as a group, right? And so if this guy hits this minion, let's say for 10 damage, that 10 damage is done to the group. So he would have enough damage to kill 2 of them. And so you just choose. This one's dead, and then he can say, I'm going to probably kill this one too. Because what happened is I used this whatever, firebolt that just went and it banked off this guy's head into the other one's head. And so we ran through this encounter. I want to say this encounter only lasted 3 rounds, right? This massive, 24 goblins done in 3 rounds. And they were beat up, because that was the other nice thing, is everyone hits. So damage is just happening everywhere. And the players realized that, oh God, like this is getting brutal. We really do need to use things like catch breath, right? Because if I don't catch my breath in order to use my recovery, which gives me hit points, I might go down. I had 2 players go down into negative hit points, and that means that they can't heal themselves. So now someone else has to run over and heal them before they die, because if they exert themselves while they're in negative hit points, they lose more hit points, and if ever they get to a certain number, they die fully. Now let's talk about some extra little, I think, that makes this game a little even more interesting, in terms of like, what's the word I want to use here? In terms of like tactics for the GM that can be really fun to apply a little pressure to these players. So we have these other actions, and let's talk about aid. So aid and flanking, right? We'll talk about aid and flanking. So if I've got this guy and this guy, and they're in the same group, so they're going to activate together. And let's say this mage is over here, he's wandered over here, and I've got these guys pretty close. Well, when I roll a power roll, so let's go down here and look at this power roll. If I roll this power roll, I'm going to do, 3 damage, 4 damage, 5 damage, and I'm going to get higher, right? And let's say I had Malice to use. Well, if I've got Malice to use, I could do 5 damage, 6 damage, 7 damage, and I could potentially get him bleeding. So that's what I'm going to do, right? If I wanted to be a real dick of a DM, and I'm like, yeah, it's your first encounter, but it's time you learn, right? I burn 2 Malice in a second. I'm going to burn 2 Malice in a second. But first, I'm going to set it up to make sure that it's really good and juicy. So what do? This guy's going to come over, and that's his move. He's still got an action, and he's got a maneuver. Now, he could also do a couple other things, right? Because you could actually do your action and then continue your move, et cetera, et cetera. But let's just say he's going to do his action. He moves over, or he's going to do his move to move over there. His action and his maneuver, he's going to just attack, right? He's going to do his normal attack, and whatever. He rolls a sort of an average roll, and he gets his 4 damage. Boom, 4 damage on the guy, right? Well, now for his maneuver, he's going to aid. And what aiding does is going to give anyone else who attacks him next an edge, right? And an edge in this game, if you've got a single edge, it just means +2 to your roll. Well, this guy's now going to use his move to come over. And now for his main action, he's going to attack. And I'm going to burn 2 Malice, and he's going to do this bury the point. But here's the catch. Not only does he have an edge from his buddy for aiding, but now he's flanking him, and he gets another edge, which means he has a double edge, which means that now when I roll, I'm going to, whatever I roll, do 1 step higher. So now I rolled 2d10 plus 2. Let's say I get a 12, and you'd think, oh, it's this one. No, it immediately becomes this one. So now I do 7 damage to that guy, and I do, a potential bleed effect. And it's going to do a bleed effect because this guy's might, there's no chance it's 3 at first level. Nothing can be 3 at first level, right? And so it's fantastic, right? It's so neat to have these little combos. And I could do a knockback, right? So you have these maneuvers with these knockbacks. Let's say instead, for some reason, he comes over here, this guy's over here, or you know what? Let's say this guy's behind him, or better yet, a minion. Like this is something that I thought was hilarious kind of thing that could happen. Let's say the minion comes over here, and now the minion's between him and the wall. And this guy now comes over, and the minion's done the same thing. He can't do an action and a move, but let's say he just moves over there, and for his maneuver, he aids. So he's like, I got him, boss, right? And now this guy comes running over, and he steps right here, and I go through that same thing. All right, I'm gonna end up doing this because I'm using 2 Malice, and I've got double edge, and so I roll, and I get this, right? Well, I still have a maneuver, because this guy hasn't used his maneuver yet. So now what does he do? He uses his maneuver to do a knockback. And so now I've already done 7 damage and I've got that guy bleeding. Now I do a maneuver, and the maneuver I'm going to do is a knockback. I rolled 2d10. I've got 1 edge, so it's 2d10 plus 4, or my might is probably low, so maybe it's only 2d10 plus 2. Whatever it is, let's say I get a push 2. This guy can't go that way. He takes 2 damage. But I do 2 damage to the minion too. In essence, I slam him back, and the minion who's kind of like standing there just gets smashed as well. This guy doesn't care. But I just did a ton of damage to him, right? 9 damage, and he's bleeding, which is, this is where you get into these interesting little combos. Now, let's talk about two other things real quick, and then I'm going to get out of here because I don't want to. You might not want to hear all this. Grab to me is fascinating because in essence, what's happening with grab in other games, grab mechanics were nauseating, right? But these little packets of information, even though you have to have a lot of them available and quick reference, but there's some great reference sheets already that have been created that help with this. But I love this sort of like risk reward, right? So with this grab, it's a maneuver, and either you're going to not grab them, or you're going to grab them, but if you do, you can grab them. It's a choice. If you do grab them, they're going to get a free strike on you, or potentially you grab them and they don't get a free strike, right? And I think that this kind of concept is really cool because now it's like, I can grab you, but I'm going to get hurt in the process. And to escape, it's the same sort of thing. The escaping someone is a maneuver, and to escape them, it's either you don't escape, or you escape but you get hit, or you escape perfectly, right? Like it's in essence the reverse. So I think grabbing is going to be really interesting. I haven't done it yet, but I'm excited to do that. And the final thing I want to kind of talk about is, let's just talk about this little packet here, this potency. When I was reading this at first, I was like, that's a lot. Like, I don't understand. It didn't process initially. But then I saw Colville talk about a video in terms of how they were able to sort of pack in all this information into these small lines of, in essence, kind of code. And I really like it because it was very smooth in play. Not only is everything really fast thus far, especially when you have a VTT to run this. I mean, some people might complain about that, but I think that pen and paper wise, I would be just as smooth. But things like these free strikes, right? So this free strike being 1 means that anytime this monster gets an opportunity attack, 1 damage, right? I don't have to think about the roll. The only time I roll is I roll 1 time for the attack, and then the rest of it's sort of like embedded in auto, right? So free strike, oh, you take 1 damage. Free strike, you ran past a sniper, 2 damage. But then you have stuff like this, where this little code means 7 damage, and this is the equivalent of an opposed check between this guy's might and your might, right? This is in essence saying that if your might is less than 2, now you're bleeding. If your might is less than 1, now you're bleeding. If your might is less than 0, now you're bleeding. Because this can happen. I've got plenty of players right now who have -1 might because they're like a fragile caster. So depending on who he hits with this, if this Goblin Warrior runs up to the mage-like person who has a -1 might, guess what? No matter which one I roll, they're bleeding. But if I run up to the tank, the big Fury or the Tactician, unless I roll this, they're not bleeding. And so it's a really cool little mechanic. And you can boost potency. I don't know if Malice does it. I haven't seen that. So the monsters can't boost potency, but the players can. But this makes it so that there's a lot of dense fun in this small little packet of information. Oh, and I just realized I'm cutting off some of it. Sorry about that. So there's the free strike 1 damage, free strike 2 damage. That makes this a lot of fun. So anyways, that's what I had to show. I hope you enjoyed this. It's a lot of fun so far in terms of this game. Here's this guy's. Sorry, I cut that off earlier too. So I'll give you more updates as I continue to play.